my disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am not a lactation consultant. I'm merely speaking from experience, having breastfed 4 kids, and you know, what worked for me, what didn't work for me.
High expectations of you know, who we are, who we need to be for not only ourselves but everyone else. And sadly, everyone else usually comes first. It's really hard for us to give ourselves grace.
Parents at lunch to surprise my children, and then I forgot. For this Mama Advice Wednesday topic, I wanted to discuss weaning your baby from breastfeeding. Now, bear with me. I have 5 tips, but I did write them down, so I'm going to be looking down at my phone, so don't judge me. First of all, let me start off by saying my disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am not a lactation consultant. I'm merely speaking from experience, having breastfed 4 kids, and, you know, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, those types of things. So just putting that out there so we're on the same page. So with that being said, I also want to just say something else. If you're looking to wean your child because of what somebody else thinks, please don't do that. And what I mean by that is, if somebody is like, oh, how old is he now? He shouldn't be breastfeeding anymore. Or, oh my God, he's way too big to be breastfeeding. That is none of their business. You breastfeed your child until you and your child are ready to stop breastfeeding. Now, of course, there are some things that would negate that. Like if you have medical issues or an emergency or anything like that and you have to stop breastfeeding, that's completely different. But if you're solely deciding to stop breastfeeding because of the opinions of others, please, please, please do not do that at all. Do not do that. But now that I've gotten that out of the way, I did want to go ahead and get into my tips. So tip number 1, for the main thing I think that people fail to realize when it comes to weaning your child from breastfeeding is that it takes commitment and dedication. It takes the same amount of commitment and dedication that it took to start breastfeeding, and that it took to get to the point that you're at with your breastfeeding journey. What I mean by that is, your child, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however old they are, that's all they know. You are their comfort. You're more than just a food source for them. And so stopping breastfeeding, it's new to them, and it's going to take time for them to adjust. So I think that there's going to be days where you're like, oh my God, why won't you just stop breastfeeding? And there's going to be days where you're like, oh my God, just get off of me, you know, or why is this taking so long, you know, whatever. And you're just going to have the commitment and the dedication to stick it out. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And with that being said, also set a date for yourself. I think that it's very realistic to set like 30 days out, you know, as being your goal. So like if you were to say, okay, today I want to be done breastfeeding by Christmas, I think that would be very reasonable. That's 30 days or so, give or take. Well, it's a little more than 30 days, but I think that would be very reasonable goal to try and achieve. But to say that like you want to be done breastfeeding in 2 weeks, or you want to be done breastfeeding in 7 days, I think that's a little drastic. Again, unless you have a medical condition or, you know, like some type of emergency or something where you have to stop breastfeeding overnight, or where you have to stop breastfeeding in a rapid amount of time, then that's different. But if you are solely deciding to wean your child because, you know, you're done, you're tired of breastfeeding, you want your body back, or your child has been slowly like not interested in breastfeeding anymore, I would always say going slower is better. And that's going to bring me to my point number 2, which is to wean slowly. Again, I say this because you don't want to be engorged. You don't want the problems that come with that. And weaning like overnight, just stopping cold turkey. I know that there's these things like, oh, you can use cabbage leaves and stuff like that. To me, it's just not worth it. I tried it and it's very uncomfortable, and it's just not worth it. I'll just say that. It's just not worth it for me. From experience, it's not worth it for me. It might be worth it for you, but my recommendation would be to wean slowly. An example of what that looks like would be to remove one feeding every 7 days. That seems to be what works best for me. Again, this is just my experience off of 3 children so far that I've weaned, but that allows my body and my baby to adjust to the new schedule and to adjust to this new thing of not breastfeeding. And so that's going to bring me to tip number 3, which is to remove a feeding every 7 days. And what I mean by that, I want to give you an example. Currently, Cohen breastfeeds at 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and then in between 6:30 and 7. So if I was to wean Cohen, I would remove, let's say, the 3 o'clock feeding. So all this week, I would not breastfeed him at 3 o'clock. He would still breastfeed at all his other regular times, but the 3 o'clock feeding, I would either offer him more food or offer him a drink or distract him in some type of way so that he isn't interested in breastfeeding until, it's time for him to breastfeed at his bedtime breastfeeding. And then after 7 days, now I'm going to remove that 11 a.m. breastfeeding. And again, it's the same thing where it's like I'm offering you more food, I'm offering you more drink, I'm distracting you with toys, I'm distracting you with, books or playing music, whatever it is, so you're not thinking about breastfeeding. And I would just continue that cycle until I got all the way gone and there were no more, times to breastfeed. The one thing I did want to mention, tip number 4, I guess I'll say, is to employ others. When you're doing this, it will be hard to distract your child. I mean, your child, if your child is anything like Cohen, he's going to be pulling on your shirt, give me the boob, right? And so it's very important to employ others if you can. And what I mean by that is, example again, if I'm going to get rid of that 3 p.m. feeding and Cohen is just being extremely difficult, I might ask Desmond to take Cohen to the store. Or can he take him to the park? Or can he, deal with Cohen while I go get out of the house for a little bit? Or maybe I'm getting rid of my nighttime feeding. Grandma, can you do the nighttime routine? Or I might just come up with a whole new nighttime routine that doesn't involve breastfeeding. Whatever is going to work for you and your household and your body is honestly what I recommend. But again, don't be afraid to employ some type of help because it's hard. It's hard because, again, your child only knows you. You're their comfort. You're their, that bond that you have with them. It's a lot more than just food. So just keep that in mind when you're going on this journey of weaning your child, which is going to bring me to my final tip, which is take it slow. Again, unless there's a medical concern, there's no rush on this. 30 days, I think, is a good amount of time to kind of, accomplish this goal of weaning your child. But it can be shorter than that or it can be longer than that. It's completely up to you and what's going to work best for you and your body and your baby and your lifestyle. I don't think that there's any one way fits all type of thing when it comes to weaning, because you know your baby and you know your body. And so I mostly recommend that you do what's going to work best in all of those scenarios for everybody involved. And again, please don't wean your child just because somebody is telling you that you need to. It's up to you. That's your baby. Do what you know is best for you and your child. So I hope that these tips helped you. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or concerns or anything that maybe I didn't cover completely, and I'll be sure to answer it. You guys have a good day.